Life is incredible. The things that we can feel throughout the day are a cornucopia of experiences. Even as I sit here recording this, my body is experiencing an orchestra of sensations. And in many respects, we could even describe the sensations as a cacophony. They can be overwhelming. They can make us want to shut down. They can drive us insane in certain seconds. But in totality, the human experience is mesmerizing. Simply incredible. I've had the blessing of living an interesting life. I have felt the greatest, most intense pleasure that is imaginable. And I have felt horrors beyond imagination. Today, I want to reflect on the magic of the human experience, to explore the horrors, the healing, and the magic. There are times in life when we feel bored and broken. Every second seems to be listless, and we long for splendor. But even in these boring moments, the sensations that we feel throughout our body are marvelous. They're not fun, but if you take the time to hone in into each, I think you'll find that even in boredom, you can set yourself free. Earlier, I was speaking to one of my employees, and they were curious to the nature of what it felt like while I was in chemotherapy. Whenever your hair falls out, there's a sensation to it. A lot of times, whenever you're watching movies or you read a story about someone who's going through chemotherapy, you just see their hair fall out. The reality is that hair helps us identify who we are. It's amazing how much hair has an influence on our identity, on our self-perception. I remember waking up one morning, raising my head off of the pillow. My then girlfriend woke up about the same time, and she's like, "Oh my God." And I said, "What?" She says, "The pillow." And I look at the pillow, and it looks like a cat had just slept on the pillow the entire night because globs of hair were laying atop of the pillow. It was startling, to say the least. I think that one of the reasons why we're so startled by our hair falling out is because that's not supposed to happen. Now, as a man, your hair falls out over time. It's part of the game. And really, my hair, if it all fell out, I wouldn't give a care. But in that moment, when things happen at an accelerated rate of speed, it's jarring. Now, whenever my head hair fell out, I wasn't so concerned. But whenever my beard hair fell out, I was very concerned. And then it just got exceptionally weird whenever all my hairs fell out until I just had like 3 eyelashes. But what does it feel like? What does it feel like when you're going through chemotherapy and your hair falls out? For me, it felt like someone was ripping out my hair from under my scalp. There was like a burning, tingling sensation, this achiness across my skin. Now, all in all, that sensation was one of the least impacting sensations that I have felt, but it still registered this ever-present, mild agony. Another sensation that I experienced was at the location of my port. Now, the port is what they used to provide the chemotherapy to me so that it could go to my heart and just flush everywhere. That area always hurt. And what it felt like was that someone was grabbing my chest hair and ripping it out. And if you touched the area of the port, it would be a sharp pain. But if you applied anything more than, say, a nickel's worth of pressure, it would feel like someone was hitting me in the chest with a ball-peen hammer. Now, that was a mild, that was just like seasoning to the experience. Whenever I would move, it always felt like I had glue in all of my muscles. And so whenever I moved, it felt like the muscle was tearing away from the bone. And then I had ropes of exhaustion wrapped around my bones. And every time that I moved, I could feel this inner creakiness, like ropes twisting. And I could feel that everywhere. Sometimes I would be sitting about and I would hear strange sounds, but not from my ears. I would hear them from my nerves. One day I was sitting outside of a coffee shop and I heard that noise and I heard it inside of my fingers and I was perplexed. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but later I would discover what it was. It was my nerves atrophying. Now, the neuropathy sensation is profound. Neuropathy is whenever it feels like you have nothing there, or it can be pins and needles. It could be electricity shooting through your limbs. It can be a cold sensation. It can be a hot sensation. Now, whenever I was going through chemotherapy, I had neuropathy in my face. I had it in my tongue. I had it in my back. I had it in my hands. And this would intermittently change. Sometimes my hands would feel tingly, like I had just slept on them. Other times it'd be cold. Other times it would be warm. But sometimes they would feel like someone was hitting them with a blowtorch, a searing, burning, flesh-melting level of pain. And that would sit around, an 8 or 9 level of pain. And it would shoot and move about intermittently, randomly, it seemed. The nausea is another thing about chemotherapy, and I think that people don't really get it. Whenever you're not throwing up, you can't really actively understand the agony of the act. Nor do you really grasp it, because it's like when you got the flu or something, or some kind of stomach bug, you throw up a few times and you go on your way. And you'll probably lay in bed and be like, oh man, that hurt. Nausea from chemotherapy is unrelenting. I would make sometimes 20 sandwiches in a day. And the reason I would make 20 sandwiches is because I would eat and then I would throw up. So I didn't eat anything. So I would make another sandwich and I'd eat it and I'd throw up. And then I'd make another sandwich and I'd eat it and I would throw up again and again and again until I could finally hold something down. And that went on for 5 months. I would be, driving down the road and have to pull over to throw up. It became a common experience. You eventually get used to it. Nowadays, whenever I throw up, it's like the end of the world. I hate throwing up. It's horrible. I think you all agree with me on that one. It is gross, but it's the nature of the experience. I also had another experience. It was like roving chemical fire underneath of my skin. It would be like the worst sunburn you've ever felt, just sliding under your skin here and there. And it had a taste to it. That's the interesting thing about chemo is there's a taste to it. And mine smelled like, have you ever opened up a refrigerator door, like a brand new refrigerator, and you smell the inside? It has like this really weird plastics smell. Really strong, real strong. Now take that smell and mix it with like chamomile. And that's like in your blood. So you can like taste it all the time. You could smell it all the time. Another experience that I had with chemotherapy is it made most everything taste like ash. That was brutal. After a while we would eat, though, in order to protect my mouth, I'd have to wash it out with some baking soda and salt to make sure that I didn't get a terrible infection because the mucous membranes of my mouth were no longer functioning. All in all, the chemotherapy experience was horrendous. It was easily one of the worst experiences of my life. But I love it. I have a profound love for everything that I have ever faced. Everything. Getting cancer was the second best thing to ever happened to me. And only recently was that trumped. Our hardships are gateways. Our weaknesses are not to be embraced, but instead in our triumph, we can celebrate our successes. We need to stop celebrating how weak we are. You need to stop celebrating your diseases. Now, I love my relationship with cancer, but not because I'm virtue signaling or think that I deserve some kind of additional attention just because I experienced a horrible disease. What I appreciate about cancer is it opened a door for me. It helped transform my life and guided me to live in a way I had never imagined. It allowed me to taste death in a way I had never tasted death before. And that sensation, holy moly. There's nothing like reflecting after your lung has been removed and you can barely breathe. You can barely walk down the street without losing your breath. Where every which way that you lay, it hurts because you have the side of you is stapled shut. Pain is incredible, but it is a gift. And in that moment, when I combined that pain with immeasurable loneliness, the fear of regret, and the feeling that the sum of my existence was worthless, that was beautiful. And it was beautiful because it triggered a transformative epiphany. I had, in a sense, wasted my life, just like many people of the world waste their life every day. Perhaps many of you have wasted your life. It's terrible, and I know it probably hurts to hear that you've squandered thousands of seconds, tens of thousands of seconds, doing effectively nothing. Paddling water, maybe hoping one day your dreams will show up or someone will select you to do something sensational. That's not how life works. You make your own life. Now, you're not guaranteed to get the stuff that you're making, but you're not going to get it if you're waiting for someone to give it to you. Because you definitely don't deserve it. I believe that God wants us to work for the things that we have, and those who sit on their hands deserve everything they get. You got to work your ass off if you want something. You want something meaningful. And you got to be prepared to keep grinding to have it. But in this moment, something scared me. It was the beginning of the day. It was a hot summer day. I was sitting upstairs in one of my friend's bedrooms. I was staying there because I couldn't take care of myself after having my lung removed. And I was starting to recover. I was starting to get my bearings back. And each night, I was lonelier and lonelier. As I sat in that cold, dark room by myself, I started thinking about how I had wasted my life and that the sum of everything that I've ever done was nothing. Hans came over that day. Hans he is the most masculine man I've ever met. The dude is powerful, like in the most beautiful way, confident, incredible, intelligent. He was an adventurer. This guy would drive around the Mediterranean and he paid his way by creating paintings of people. You know, they would pay him for it, or they'd provide him lunch or gas or what have you. And he would do that a couple of times a year. So we walked to the end of the road, and there's this giant stone that's sitting at the end of the street. We get there, and I sit down, and Hans's shaved head is sparkling in the sun's rays. We're chatting a little bit, and I say to him, "You know, Hans, I think that I've wasted my life. What have I done? What have I really done for someone else?" And he sits there for a moment. Says to me, and he's from the Netherlands. He has this really thick accent, and he's like, "I've been around the world, and I've met a lot of people. You're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game." Now, maybe for you that meant nothing. And for a lot of people, it would mean nothing. For me, that was powerful. It inspired me. Sometimes we need to be inspired by others. There is a limitation to the degree that we can inspire ourselves. We need someone who actually cares about us to reach into our heart and press special buttons that only they can see, to tell us things we could never tell ourselves. What he said to me that day transformed my life. In a sense, I felt like I had squandered my existence. And I could see, based upon what he said to me, the influence that I had had on others. But I decided it wasn't enough. I needed to do something significant. And the more that I began to think about my own demise, I began to fall into the idea that I was going to die. I thought, okay, I got like 5 years. What can I get done in 5 years? And I worked my tuchus off searching for a purpose. I eventually found my purpose, and that's what led me to where I am today. Suffering ends when we give purpose to the pain. One day I was sitting outside of my favorite coffee house, and I was drinking it was a mocha. I think it was a Milky Way or something. It's from Picasso's Coffee House, if you ever want to check them out, in St. Charles, Missouri. I was trying to enjoy it, and my body just began to burn. And it burned everywhere. Now, mind you, I was sitting amongst friends who were laughing and smiling and joking, keeping my cool, as I felt the pain-o-meter begin to rise. And it rose pretty quickly. Within about 5 minutes, it went from a solid 6 to a solid 10. As I sat there, I felt myself wanting to cry. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide from the pain, but where would I go? If I ran somewhere, that's exactly where I would be. Because ultimately, I was a prison of my own body. No matter where I run, that pain's going to stick to me like glue. I couldn't escape it. So I took a breath, I closed my eyes, and I spoke to myself. Inside my mind, I said, you can't escape this. There's nowhere you can go. What are you going to do? My eyes were watering. My body hurt. Everything hurt. If I can't run from it, I'll embrace it. And from this experience, from diving deeply into the horror of it, I would search for wisdom. I would search for some kind of truth. So instead of pulling away, instead of clenching my teeth, instead of growling or howling, I jumped in. I invited every sensation. And at that moment, it was definitely a cacophony. It was not beautiful like an orchestra playing our favorite melodies. It was intense. It was overwhelming. It was unbelievably agonizing. But being that I was facing the pain in the realest possible way, there was no anxiety. The pain was just the pain. It was there. I acknowledged it, and I loved it, and I explored it. It became a buffet of sensations, beautiful sensations. And in some way, even though the pain was still there, my suffering had ended. I had granted purpose to the pain. I saw a value in it. I knew that the pain that I was enduring could be used to help someone else, that it granted me insight, greater, deeper insight into the human condition. It would permit me the opportunity to empathize in ways that otherwise would have been impossible. The experience of being human is incredible. The wisdom we can access from our everyday experiences can be awe-inspiringly amazing.